Hello and welcome, I'm Oles Gerjuk and you're watching Head to Head on UATV. The international community has strongly condemned the sham elections organized by Russian-led militants in occupied areas of the Donbas on November 11th. Ukraine has called on world leaders to increase pressure on the Kremlin through new sanctions and demands an emergency meeting of the Trilateral Contact Group in Minsk. To talk more about this, we welcome to the studio today Vitaliy Sizov, an analyst at the Donetsk Institute of Information. Hello and thank you for being with us today.
Hello.
So the whole world is united around the statement that these elections were bogus and the results are to be void, and that this condemnation has been expressed multiple times prior to the elections. So what was the reason actually to hold the elections if the reaction from the world was already known?
I think that Putin wants to show that he don't have any influence on this situation, and he could not do anything with these local self-proclaimed authorities to stop this election. I think it's a general goal of Putin.
So you think that he wants to show that these occupational authorities behave independently from Russia?
Absolutely independently, and this self-proclaimed republic don't feel any influence of Russia, and they are absolutely independent.
What is the hidden meaning of this? The hidden meaning is that basically
Putin wants to change the negotiation in Minsk. Maybe he wants he tell about this all time that he wants to direct dialogue between the Ukrainian government and these guys which were elected yesterday.
Are to be elected. Yes.
Elected, yes.
So basically,
but we cannot talking about the election on that territory because we need some condition for democracy election. We don't have such condition at this territory.
Of course, this is the war-torn territory. This is impossible.
Not only because of that, we don't see any pro-Ukrainian parties or organization. Even pro-Russian organization cannot participate in this election if they don't have, if they only separatist leader that's supported by Moscow can participate in this election. When you some separatist, but you don't have any support from Moscow, you want to be candidate as independent candidate, you cannot do this. You will be under the pressure on that territory,
yes, and actually,
even if you pro-Russian. I don't say about the pro-Ukrainian party or organization. There are no freedom of speech, there are no freedom of association, and that's why we cannot talking about some independent candidates, some election, some process.
Well, actually, there were a few militants among the candidates to lead the occupied territories, and the main candidates were Pushilin and Pasishnik, and the militants trying, basically, they fled to Russia, trying not to be persecuted in the occupied territory. This clearly proves that two of these candidates were supported by the Kremlin. But do you mean that with this plan, Putin wants to persuade the world that the war is basically in the Donbas is civil or not?
Yes, he wants to show that this is some civil war, because if we talking about the beginning of this conflict, we can speak about the leader of separatists that were Russian citizens. For example, the Borodai, the first leader of DPR, and he is a Russian citizen. But it's not normal, and whole world sees that this leader is from Russia. And that's why they need some local
representatives
guys that will represent this republic as some independent organization. But this is not only questions for this election, because I don't understand how they organized this election, because the Central Election Commission of DPR said they founded 408 polling stations for whole territory.
408, okay.
But before the war, only for Donetsk, when presidential election was organized in Donetsk and at 2010, yes, the Central Election Commission founded 480 polling stations only for Donetsk, for center city. And now
and
the
they
separatists
established for the whole territory,
for the whole territory, yes,
the same
and
amount, even less.
And it's not enough for this population.
To represent the whole population.
Yes,
okay.
because they could not, if they even want to vote, they cannot vote because they don't have enough this polling station.
So they don't have an access to the polling station.
Yes, and this polling station, they don't have enough condition to hold this election. They don't have enough people, they don't enough technical resources, and this situation, this is only pictures, some picture of election. It's not a real election.
Well, this Russia's behavior is abhorrent violation not only of Ukrainian legislation, but also of all the international laws and norms. Can it go unpunished?
I think that we see a number of statements, different countries that said that this country don't recognize this election, and I think maybe it's enough. But before election, we see the sanction from United States.
Yes.
And this is the serious step to show Russia that the European countries and the USA, they have a strong position, and
yes,
they don't recognize this election, and maybe in future Russia will be punished for this election. I don't sure that this election is the central problem, but in complex with some situation in Syria, in other countries, in situation connected with the United States election, I think in complex this situation could influence and could help to implement new sanctions, some new sanction. Maybe not so hard, not so tough, but some sanction could be.
Well, we know about the U.S. stance on the situation with the war in eastern Ukraine, and they multiple times reaffirmed that they would impose stronger sanctions every 2 months or so if the situation will continue to deteriorate. But would the European countries also join this step?
Europe is more complicated structure than
yes,
the United States, and that's why it's
hard to predict.
Hard to predict because every country has own position, and that's why maybe and they some different interests in some sphere than United States. For example, the North Stream or other questions, but in general position about respect to sovereignty of Ukraine, about the territorial integrity, they have a strong position and they support this. Maybe Europe not so tough because of this complicated position, but the general position is tough, I think.
Well, now after these elections were held, Ukraine demands to hold this emergency meeting of the Trilateral Contact Group in Minsk. How do you think, would it change the format of the Minsk negotiations, and what can they discuss at this emergency meeting? I mean, can they seek for some solutions in this situation?
I don't think that we will see some changes, because Ukraine have a strong position for whole conflict, that we don't recognize the leader of this republic, and
of course, yes.
And we don't want to have a direct negotiation with these persons. But I think Russia will try to repeat this statement, that we see some legal election process, and that's
some
why
new public figures that should be involved in the negotiation.
Yes, as partners, some partners, not as some strange figure, as now when we have Russia, Ukrainian, and some citizen of Ukraine involved in this process, and that's why I think that could be some conflict, but in general situation won't change.
Well, another issue that I want to discuss is that lately Russia seems like has been persuaded that the peacekeeping mission should be introduced in the occupied areas of Donbas, and which is the most important, that the UN peacekeepers should be deployed throughout the whole occupied territory, which was the main stumbling block in the negotiations with Russia on this UN peacekeeping mission. But do you see anything hidden behind this Russia's consent? Do you expect that this UN peacekeeping mission can be really introduced?
I think that mission can be really introduced, and I see many research of public opinion that Ukrainian people support the idea of peacekeeper mission on Donbas. But it's the last point of some general big process, the peacekeeping mission. If we don't have some deal before the peacekeeper mission, we won't see this mission in future. We cannot see this mission.
What kind of deal could it be?
I don't know. The United States and other partners could be more tough toward Russia, and that could influence on Russia. It's one step.
Increase the pressure. Okay.
Increase the pressure, yes. And the other step, maybe Ukraine will be ready to some proposition of Russia, maybe about the content of this mission, about the
participants who would participate.
Yes, maybe Russia want to see some country partners, maybe Belarus, maybe some other countries, maybe some Caucasian country, I don't know, and maybe Russia will see own partners in this mission, and not some neutral states.
Unfortunately, we run out of time, but thank you for your interesting comments, and thank you for being a guest today at our studio.
Thank you.
That was Vitaliy Sizov, an analyst at the Donetsk Institute of Information. Thank you for watching Head to Head, and stay tuned for more with UATV.